Hello again. For those who just got here, welcome to the Startup University. We've learned quite a lot today in one of the best universities we have now, but it's time to talk about how to tell the story of your startup. We have just talked about how to choose the right VC, but to find the right partners, the right VC, the right employees, we need to pitch well, and a good pitch can make it or break it for your startup. So with no further ado, I'd like to invite the moderator, Clara Armand-Delille, founder of Third Eye Media, to moderate the conversation with Bobby Healy, from CTO of Carthaler, Julie Devonshire, Director of Entrepreneurship at King's College London, and finally, Ross Mason, founder of MuteSoft. Please welcome on stage and a warm round of applause to all of them.
Me?
Thank you.
Wow. So far away. Hello.
Hi. Hello, everyone. So we're here to talk about how to pitch your startup. And so, you know, all the panelists here have been on either side, either on the receiving end of a pitch or having to pitch their startup themselves. So, you know, the first obvious question to ask is, what makes a good pitch? And Ross, let's start with you.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I was actually at the pitch stage this morning, and I had to listen in a good way. I really wanted to listen to 8 pitches in 1 hour. And I think the stark realization is I think early stage pitchers find it really hard to talk about their go-to-market and business model. So they talk very much about the vision and the tee up, but they don't get into how their business is going to work or what they measure. Mm-hmm. And I think even early stage companies, in order to know if you're going in the right direction, you have to be measuring something, and you have to be able to articulate what the strategy is going to be versus put a lot of options in front of an investor. So for me, thinking a bit more about what the investor is looking for, which is how to identify if this company is growing and moving in the right direction, even in the first year of inception, is really important.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I was judging 8 different startups as well, and we were asked to give feedback at the end, and every single one of them missed team. They flick through the team slide. Like I already know a picture myself, but actually for an investor, particularly in an early stage business that may have to change its business model, team is absolutely everything. So for me, a good pitch deck is more about what's a bad pitch deck, and it's about forgetting how important team is. It needs to be a key focus on the deck and on the presentation.
Mm-hmm. Interesting insights.
At King's each year, I probably read or see about 250 pitches.
Okay.
And I always return to the same 2 words that I believe help to make a really fantastic pitch. And number 1 is to do with robustness. So before you even begin your pitch, you have to really think about how you can make your proposition more and more and more robust, which makes it, and I come to my second word, more compelling for the audience. So you've got to go out there, you've got to compel the audience with what it is you're proposing and the style in which you propose it.
Sure. Sure. And so the flip side of this question is, what is a nightmare pitch? What should you never, ever do? What makes you cringe when you're in the receiving side of the pitch? And what would you never, ever say to any audience in any circumstance when you're pitching your startup?
Sorry, just for me earlier on, the biggest one from earlier on was dissing the competition as if they're not important, that they're all, you know, not that smart. I think you need to take competition in your deck and address it really seriously and not, you know, you just ignore it.
Sure.
My biggest one is that so many people don't think about the psychology of their audience enough, and they launch straight into their proposition where they do much better with the audience. They gain much more positivity from the audience by spelling out the problem first. People can understand those kinds of problems. They can buy into them, especially if you have a case. Sure. And then your proposition becomes a solution to that problem, and it becomes much more compelling, I believe, to that audience.
Great point.
Yeah, I think for me, I meet a lot of early stage founders, and they have an idea and a concept, and rather than zeroing in on one thing, the thing they're going to go and do, they give you lots of options and potential ways of creating value in the market. The problem with that is it feels like unstructured thinking. It's like they haven't really thought through what they want to go after first, so there's no linearity in the pitch.
Sure.
And so for me, I like someone who's going maybe after a big problem, but has a very clear go-to-market and at least an 18-month sort of rough plan of how they're going to get there without too much variability in the way they picture. Because as an investor, I'm looking to be able to communicate the idea to other people as well. And if I can't do that easily, then I lose the thread of the value of what they're going to provide in the market, and that's a challenge.
Sure.
Yeah.
What about timing? What about how soon should you start pitching yourself versus sort of working away under the radar, getting some growth, and then starting to market yourself? What is your thought? What are your thoughts on that?
I have a funny perspective here because I'm wearing multiple hats as an investor, but I'm also pitching myself.
Sure.
And I've been boiling that particular chicken for over a year, and I haven't pitched to anyone. So, for me, you really need to make sure that you've lined up all your ducks, that you have all the questions answered, you've done your research, you've got pretty much answers to all the questions that an investor may throw at you. It has to be well covered.
At King's College London, we're dealing with really early stage entrepreneurs. So we try to teach them that once your idea, your proposition is protected, then you should be out there hustling. And if you're not hustling, you're not being an entrepreneur.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll add to that I like to go out sooner rather than later. I think it's very tempting, especially for technical founders. So I see a lot of enterprise SaaS companies, and they want to go and build everything so they can do demos and showcase. And the risk of that is it's a very comfortable world, especially for technical founders, to stay in their, in their laptops coding. And the real job of founders is to get out there a lot more and articulate the idea. Now, whether that's in conferences or is actually just at bars and meetups or, with other companies in their space, getting good at that pitch, I think you should be doing it early and often.
Sure.
But maybe not doing a full company release until you do have something and you can answer a lot of the questions.
Right. It seems like it's a tough balance to strike because on the one hand, you'll hear a lot of startups say, I lifted my head and it was too late. I should have started reaching out to VCs way earlier. And then on the other hand, for example, I was speaking to a early stage startup last night that said, our PR agency did a great job. We got out in the FT. I was totally unprepared for it. Right? I then was propelled into conversations with VCs that I literally wasn't prepared to have. Do you have any insights or tips on how an early stage startup should go about thinking about this?
It's good, your point. Yeah, you do. If you're going to go to VCs, you need a pitch. Yeah. Like having a conversation, like second time round, you can go and have a conversation with VCs. But the first time round, as an unknown founder, you need a pitch and you need to be fairly confident in it. Even if it's not the thing you end up building, you need something where you can answer questions and you can get that second and third meeting. Like if you don't have that down, it's just I have an idea and I think it's going to be great. That's just not enough. They need a bit more structure.
Sure.
Market timing, so good.
I think when early stage entrepreneurs first go and meet a VC, it can be quite a bruising experience. So I think it's so important to make sure that what you're talking about is so robust that it just stacks up against their criteria and that you've really, really understood what it is they're looking for in an entrepreneur.
Sure.
Yeah, but the market timing, so my question was kind of predicated on the assumption that you can keep under the radar with the idea long enough to really get ready so that when you do come out with it, that people that chase you are already a year behind. And so market timing is the key consideration, right? If there's already horses that have bolted, you need to go out and just get on the road and start pitching. But if it's a unique idea and you can keep it under the radar and build yourself an advantage, then stay low and stay under the radar and don't start, because it's a leaky world, the idea gets out. That's the mode I'm in now, such as the uniqueness of the idea.
Sure. So from everything that we're covering right now, it seems to a certain degree that there's some kind of subliminal template for what a good pitch looks like, what you really shouldn't do, kind of a rough sense of timing for going out, at the right time with the pitch. But what about individuality? Isn't that what makes a great pitch? Being like standing out.
That's the person, though. It's the person and the pitch. It's a combination of all the things. You know, for me, certainly a template. My decks look awful, so it's nothing to do with the deck. It's down to how you sell it, and the idea as well makes it a lot easier.
I agree. I think the individuality comes from the pitching entrepreneur and also from their idea. But the template is there for good reason. It's there to help you with the whole storytelling process to make sure that what you're talking about is really, really compelling. So I'm in favor of the template.
Interesting. Yeah. Behind me, I can see a screen with some questions from the audience. Should we take a couple questions?
Yeah. Why not?
All right. What is your perspective on the importance of slide design? So you talked about the importance of having a pitch when you go to investors.
Yeah. So you don't want hideous slides, but I don't think investors are looking for beautiful slides. I think people spend a lot of time there. In reality, a white slide with black text can convey exactly the same ideas. I think things like diagrams are really important, right? Especially with more complex software or go-to-market models where there's a few different interactions and players, coming up with a diagram that really helps connect the audience with either a flow or a process or a piece of software can really help. But I wouldn't agonize over beautiful logos and templates.
Sure.
But I struggle to reduce the deck down, you know. So for me, perfect slide design has very, very little on it that communicates the important ideas, but that's hard to do.
Yeah.
I think creating any kind of visual slide that is going to help the audience to visualize and understand what it is you're proposing is always a good idea, but wordy slides, forget them.
Great, thanks for those. Let me pick another one. I saw an earlier one about how long should the perfect pitch last. It's not on the screen anymore. It's flicked through, but I want to ask that.
Until you've lost them.
And I think you'll probably lose them after not much more than 3 minutes. And although entrepreneurs think that when they pitch, they have to include this list of really important 37 things that they want to include, you don't. All you're there to do in that moment is to compel the audience to want to know more about what it is you're doing. And then in your second meeting, you can start to unleash your list of 37 things you want to tell them about, but not in the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, the 3-minute pitch has become quite a thing. I mean, demo days all over North America, at least the ones I go to, it's the standard format. And the way to think about it is like a trailer, right? You're not trying to show the whole movie to someone. You want to give them the key points that make them say, okay, I want to see more of this. You're not actually even trying to convey all the ideas. It's just enough to get them interested. And have follow-up conversations. The best one I saw recently was with a rocket propulsion company. I don't know anything about aerospace, but it was such a good pitch. And part of the pitch was they reduced the design time of rockets down 90% and the creation cost by 50%. And the 90% was achieved by using artificial intelligence algorithms to design parts of the rocket. They didn't say how it worked, and it sounded incredulous. But I wanted to go and ask them, how does it actually work? And when I heard about it, I was, struck by it. It was
so that
amazing.
Was the perfect trailer.
But they didn't have to unpack it. You just give them the trailer.
Anything else on this? No. Should I have a beta version of my product to present on my pitch versus just showing up with an idea? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, ideally, I mean, yes, but not always. A lot of ideas there isn't much there.
If you don't have a good if you don't have a demo ready, if you have a good team ready to build it, that's enough. If you have a team that's proven, it's a tech team that's proven itself.
Yeah.
We're 5 minutes away from the end. I'm just warning everybody, audience and panelists.
Financial section in the, what should be included in the financial section for me, revenue model. Half of the pitches that come to me, they forget the revenue model.
Yeah.
Pretty important. That's, if there's only one thing, that's it.
Yes.
And it's got to be a non-fantasy revenue model. So I've seen so many pitches where you actually start to really profoundly question whether that is a real route to market. So having some kind of survey evidence or anything like that will de-risk that as a proposition, I think is really, really powerful, especially if you're talking to investors and especially if you're pre-revenue.
Right. Another question that's up here that I think would be really useful to the audience. What is the basic pitch structure according to you? What should be in there and how do you frame this mounting towards your story and your case, right? You've seen so many pitches. I'm sure you have an idea.
I mean, we saw 8 this morning, right? So for me, typically, just understanding the problem very quickly, but just teeing it up, making sure I'm with the audience and knowing what the problem is, understanding how their solution solves that problem, and then understanding what the business model is, right? So, and the business model can be, all right, who are the actors, who buys, who sells, what do they buy? And then the revenue model for me then backs into that and says, this is how I think I'm going to generate revenue, even the next 6-9 months. But I like to see something, even early stage, that says they've thought it through end to end and not just have a good idea.
I always love to know about the team who are going to deliver this proposition, and I like to understand why they are perfectly qualified to deliver that idea, that piece of work.
Sure.
Yeah, the industry size, the problem, how you're going to solve it, the revenue model, the team, the competition.
Yeah.
Pretty basic ingredients.
You could do it in 3 minutes. That's the tough bit.
Yeah, that is the tough part.
Talk fast.
Yeah.
Any preference on the questions?
Ask us some hard questions. What numbers to bring?
What numbers do you bring if you don't have them yet? You make up some. You forecast what you think you're going to sell for, right? It's weird if even if you haven't got numbers, if you ask someone, okay, what are you going to sell it for? How are you going to sell it? If they can't answer it, I immediately send them back and say, well, go figure that out and come back again.
Sure.
And so you don't have to have numbers, but you have to have a model or a framing of how you think you're going to go to market with it.
Right.
There was a question about, the difficult part of asking a negative question, I think it was. And should you start a negative question? That's the competition one. And for me, you have to be brutally honest about who the competition is, what they might do, how you mitigate that. And, and that's a really hard discussion to be honest about, because generally the competition's Google or Amazon, or it's a giant, right? And you as a minnow has to say why you're going to survive in their turbulence.
Sure.
So I think that it's a negative thing. It's not really a negative thing, but it's an honest thing, and that's difficult.
I agree with you, and I think, for all audiences involved, there's something about favoring honesty, right? Coming in and saying, this is the vulnerability in my product. I mean, certainly, for example, from a journalistic perspective, you're going to want the truth, right? Because otherwise that will boomerang back at you. So I would say, I would agree with
I think another thing not to say, if you watch Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, you see a bit of this, but founders who come in and they want investors to add credibility or manpower or strength to the founding team, that's not very attractive, right? Sure. This idea that the founding team can't run the company or get it to a phase where you might bring in external management, I find that always a little bit, I don't know, doesn't make me feel good.
I think it's really fine to talk about challenges in that kind of scenario, to be honest about them. As long as you've got some kind of solution, you've got something to suggest about what you're going to do, what your plan is.
We're 40 seconds away, so I don't know if you guys have any additional comments to make.
I've just got one thing that I think is so powerful in a pitch scenario, and it's to do with the style of the entrepreneur and how passionate they are and enthusiastic about their proposition. And when they exude positive energy, they infect the audience with it, and I think that's really powerful.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an observation is look at the size of the crowd here. It's about getting out there, talking to people, getting other people's opinions, let them cut you down a little bit or reconstruct you, but it's about getting out there to summits like this, talking to other investors, other entrepreneurs. That's a huge thing, a huge thing that goes on.
All right, we're up. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.